A couple in love carefully prepared for a romantic walk under the starry sky along the coast. They strolled on the sand, illuminated by the soft glow of the moon, holding hands tightly and feeling the coolness of the night beach with their bare feet. It seemed as if the whole world had ceased to exist, and only the two of them were enjoying this moment together. The perfect silence was broken only by the rhythmic lapping of the waves crashing against the shore. But suddenly, an unknown assailant attacked the carefree couple. The woman suffered fatal injuries, while her husband was wounded. He became the sole witness to this tragedy, but later, new shocking facts came to light. After the incident, Justin Barber, the victim's husband, recounted that fateful evening in 2002. He and his wife had just finished a celebratory dinner at a restaurant to mark their third wedding anniversary. The couple decided to take a walk on Jacksonville Beach in Florida, leaving their shoes on the shore. They walked carelessly, holding hands and enjoying the warm water touching their feet. It seemed that nothing could destroy this idyllic atmosphere until an unknown man attacked them out of the darkness of the night. Later, a passerby stumbled upon Justin sitting in his car on the coastal highway. The man was in shock and bleeding, but he managed to tell that he and his wife had been attacked by a stranger. The witness, who was driving by, immediately called 911. When the paramedics arrived at the scene, the wounded man's condition had deteriorated due to significant blood loss. Therefore, the 30-year-old man was urgently evacuated by helicopter and taken to Jacksonville Hospital. Meanwhile, the police began searching for his wife on the beach. Without exact coordinates, they spent a considerable amount of time surveying the area. Eventually, they found 27-year-old April Barber. The girl's body lay near a wooden walkway, curled up. The police discovered a single gunshot wound on her body. The bullet had entered her cheek, disfiguring her once lovely face. She died at the scene. The officers who responded to the call had extensive experience dealing with similar situations. In their line of work, nighttime attacks occurred almost daily. This case involving the use of a firearm was no exception, although it had its peculiarities. One of the detectives immediately went to the hospital where the injured man had been taken. It was necessary to question him in detail and find out all the circumstances of the incident. Perhaps this would help find the first clues that would lead to the perpetrator. As it turned out, Justin had 4 gunshot wounds. One bullet had passed through his left shoulder. The second hit his right shoulder at an angle. The third left a mark on the man's chest, passing tangentially. The fourth wound was in the center of his left palm. The bullet had entered from the back. The victim said that the attacker had tried to rob them and started shooting. At that moment, he could not provide any more useful information. Despite the absence of serious injuries, Justin's wounds turned out to be superficial, so he was discharged from the hospital the very next day. The man recovered at home, and a week later, having recuperated a little, he went to the crime scene together with the investigators. They tried to reconstruct the events of that fatal night, hoping to stumble upon at least some clues that would lead them to the perpetrator. According to Justin, that day he and his wife were celebrating their 3rd wedding anniversary. After a delicious dinner at a restaurant, the couple decided to take a walk along the seashore. Taking off their shoes at the end of the promenade, they walked along the water's edge, feeling the pleasant coolness of the sand under their feet. The couple listened to the sound of the surf and enjoyed the waves touching them, savoring the cozy atmosphere of the deserted beach. Suddenly, Justin's wife abruptly stopped. The man saw a stranger quickly approaching them. He was already very close and clearly had bad intentions. The couple became alarmed, but there was nowhere to run. Approaching to about 10 meters, the criminal raised his hand, in which he held a gun. He looked threatening. The couple froze, and the unknown man, aiming his weapon at them, demanded money. They hesitated, not knowing what to do. While the couple was pondering the situation, a shot rang out in April's direction. Justin instantly rushed at the robber, trying to take the gun away from him. The man does not remember the details of the scuffle, but as a result, he received several bullet wounds to different parts of his body. At some point, he lost consciousness, and when he came to, his wife was no longer beside him. In a state of shock, Justin ran along the beach, calling out April's name, but he could not find her on the sand. A little later, he noticed her body, which the surf had washed ashore face down. Without thinking, the man rushed into the water to pull out his beloved. It was not easy, because he, still stunned, did not yet realize that he himself had multiple gunshot wounds. After getting April to the shore, Justin dragged her a distance of about 100 meters from the water's edge. And only after that, despite his state of shock, he felt that something was wrong with his body. Every movement was met with excruciating pain, especially in the shoulder area. Having dragged his wife to the foot of a wooden walkway with railings, the man tried to lift her up, leaning on the railing. But as soon as April was in an upright position, she immediately fell again. Justin no longer had the strength to lift her once more. It was then that he looked at himself and noticed numerous wounds and blood on his body. So the man decided to leave his wife in place, and he went to look for help. He tried to stop a car on the road, but to no avail. Finally, Justin got behind the wheel of his own car and drove off for help himself. After covering several kilometers, he felt his strength fading. Then the guy stopped on the side of the road and got out of the car. The driver of an oncoming vehicle, seeing the wounded man, immediately called 911. Justin could barely hold back his tears as he recounted this tragic event. Grief and despair were written on his face. For several days, the police carefully examined the beach in search of the slightest evidence. They hoped to come across clear footprints or the feet of the perpetrator, or ideally, the gun that was used in the shooting. Law enforcement officers used metal detectors for this purpose, but their efforts were in vain. Unfortunately, Justin could not provide a detailed description of the attacker. In the darkness of the night, he did not make out the man's face or any distinguishing features. This information was unsuitable for the search. The only thing the victim remembered was that the perpetrator was slightly taller and heavier than him, and he was wearing a baggy shirt and a baseball cap. The witness also noted that the man had tan skin but pale hands. Due to the lack of details, the detectives were unable to create a composite sketch of the suspect. After carefully analyzing all the data, the police concluded that about 800,000 residents of the nearest city and its surroundings fit this description. Checking this scant information took 4 years before enough material could be gathered to open a criminal case. The officers were puzzled as to why the robber had killed the girl for no apparent reason. After all, he had only wounded her husband, even though he had lost consciousness and was completely defenseless. And why, in the end, did the criminal take nothing from his victims if his goal was money? April's purse contained cash and bank cards, and the couple had jewelry on them, watches, earrings, rings, including an expensive diamond wedding ring. All this did not fit into the typical robbery scenario. Usually, thieves take valuables and flee, avoiding the use of firearms so as not to attract the attention of random witnesses and the police. Moreover, no one saw the attacker's face. So why kill the girl? In the absence of any evidence, the detectives decided to study the victims' personalities in detail. To do this, investigators went to Oklahoma, where April and Justin came from, a small town. The girl grew up in Henrietta, with a population of barely 2,000 people. She was an optimist and supported her husband in every way throughout their married life. Justin was born and raised in a similar town located a few hours' drive from the girl's hometown. The guy's family owned a 50-hectare piece of land where they kept a farm. He helped his parents with the household, and in his youth, he also worked in a local grocery store together with his older brother. Both victims came from decent, loving families where an atmosphere of mutual understanding prevailed. They had many relatives, brothers, and sisters who often gathered together and supported each other under any circumstances. Justin was a well-mannered and level-headed young man who regularly attended church. At school, he was an excellent student, and after graduation, he entered the University of Oklahoma. Initially, Justin obtained an education in finance and got a job as a financial analyst. However, this position turned out to be unsuitable for him, so the guy soon returned to university to obtain a degree in business and management. He was a smart and ambitious young man, a devoted adherent of Christian values. Family was an incredibly important part of his life. In 1998, one of Justin's friends introduced him to April. This incredibly beautiful girl seemed fearless in the face of any obstacles. She had a bright personality, full of self-confidence, and even participated in several beauty contests. April always dressed stylishly and paid a lot of attention to her appearance, especially taking diligent care of her hair. At the same time, she remained a simple, sweet girl, which added a special charm to her. April's father was an accurate and experienced hunter, so she really loved the dishes he cooked from his prey. Overall, the girl had a happy childhood. However, in 1993, a terrible event overshadowed the family idol. April's mother died of cancer. At that time, the girl was only 18, but she already had to take on all the household duties, as her father was often away on business trips to provide for the family. Later, he began to abuse alcohol, and all the worries about the house fell on April's shoulders. In addition to her studies and housework, she also took care of her younger sister and brother. The tragic loss of her mother prompted the girl to study radiation therapy. She aspired to become a doctor and help people fighting cancer. 26-year-old Justin and 23-year-old April met while studying at university. The guy was in his final year, was considered the best student in the MBA program, and enjoyed great popularity. Later, Justin Barber admitted that he was immediately drawn to the girl. Her charming smile seemed to illuminate everything around her. At the same time, there was an unfathomable sadness in her due to the loss of her mother, a topic that April preferred. They were head over heels in love with each other. This sociable and interesting couple seemed like a perfect match. Already in August 1999, just 10 months after they met, they got married in a modest ceremony in the Bahamas. The newlyweds spent the following week there, enjoying their honeymoon in a paradise corner. It seemed that nothing could cloud their happiness, and ahead of them lay a long and carefree married life. Upon returning from vacation to their hometown, Justin continued his career in finance, while April, as she had dreamed, got a job at a hospital where she treated cancer patients. Unfortunately, their love story was cut short just 3 years after the wedding. Symbolically, the tragedy occurred on the seashore, where the girl died from a single targeted shot to the face. Analyzing the family relationships of the deceased, the police found out that Justin's assurances about marital bliss were far from reality. At the sheriff's office, the couple did not mention that their marriage was happy and that the husband was madly in love with his beautiful wife. Instead, the testimonies of people close to the couple, collected by detectives, painted a completely different picture. It turned out that just a month after the wedding, the young family was on the verge of collapse. The reason was the girl's decision to move her younger brother and sister in with them. From the very beginning, this provoked quarrels. The newlyweds could not come to an agreement on methods of raising children. Gradually, their disagreements grew into constant scandals. In the end, at the end of 2000, April's brother and sister were forced to move in with other relatives, as the couple never came to an understanding. It might have seemed that the problem was resolved and the relationship would improve, but they never got to be alone together. Soon, Justin was offered an attractive job in Florida, and after brief hesitation, he agreed to move to Jacksonville. The girl supported his decision, understanding how much her husband had dreamed of this high position. She herself remained in her hometown and continued working at the local hospital, unable to leave her patients. Another reason that prevented her from moving with her husband was the responsibility for her younger brother and sister, whom she looked after. April simply could not leave them and go so far away. As a result, the couple was separated by a whole 3 hours of driving. At first, they tried to see each other more often, at least on weekends, and communicated by phone every day. But over time, the distance greatly alienated them, and the young couple began to get in touch less frequently. In early August 2002, April shared with her best friend her suspicions about Justin's infidelity. The wife knew for sure that her husband regularly played tennis with a girl he had met at a car rental place and spent a lot of time with her. She believed that a romance had developed between them and directly asked Justin about it. However, he denied any relationship on the side. Despite this, April did not believe his words, and on the day of their third wedding anniversary, August 4th, she told her husband about her intention to divorce. On August 16, 2002, they met to discuss all the details, and the very next day the girl was dead. In light of the new circumstances, investigators summoned Justin for questioning and asked him about extramarital affairs, but he firmly denied everything. He tried to portray himself as an ideal family man with an impeccable reputation. However, at that moment, Justin did not know that his mistress, whom the police had managed to find, was being interrogated in the next room. The girl immediately confessed to having an intimate relationship with Justin. So the detectives informed the suspect that they had proof of his infidelity. Only after that did he admit the fact of the extramarital affair. At that moment, the investigators realized that the man was a skilled liar, so his words could not be trusted. During the investigation, officers focused on the person of Justin Barber as the main suspect in his wife's murder. Quite quickly, law enforcement officers discovered a possible motive for the crime. While searching the man's apartment, they stumbled upon a $2 million life insurance policy taken out on his wife's life. Justin himself was listed as the beneficiary in the document. So, in the investigators' opinion, he could have killed his wife for the sake of a large insurance payout. After rewatching the footage from the beach where Justin talked about the tragedy, the detectives noticed that the man was crying somehow unnaturally. He merely covered his face with his hands, wiped his eyes, and sobbed, but they saw no tears. That day, they did not attach any importance to this, focusing on examining the crime scene. But now they understood that his behavior seemed too exaggerated. In addition, based on these recordings, the police found several inconsistencies. Why didn't Justin call for help himself as soon as he reached the car? Why did he have to drive so far and cover several kilometers before stopping, when there were stores and gas stations along the way where he could have sought help? However, Justin remained steadfast and did not admit guilt, significantly complicating the work of the police. He cooperated with the investigation but continued to insist on his version of events. But no one believed him. There was no evidence of anyone else's presence that night on the beach. Throughout the entire investigation, not a single witness was found who could confirm this. Only one eyewitness claimed to have seen another car on the shore, but this information remained unconfirmed. In addition, no surveillance cameras were installed on the beach. Moreover, the perpetrator left absolutely no traces behind, and his behavior was atypical for a robber. Instead, Justin already had a strong motive, to get rid of his wife and become rich. The process of proving the main suspect's guilt dragged on for more than 2 years. During this time, the officers failed to make any progress in the investigation. So they did not have sufficient grounds to bring formal charges against Justin. Meanwhile, the suspect began a new life. He moved to Portland, Oregon, found a new job, and started a relationship with a girl named Lisa. Justin seemed to be enjoying every day and had completely forgotten about his past. Not giving up on trying to solve the crime, the police initiated another search of his home, this time focusing on the suspect's computer. And it yielded results. Experts analyzed the data on the hard drive and finally found strong evidence of Justin's involvement in the murder. They discovered correspondence and search queries related to methods of taking life, which indicated careful and long-term planning of the crime. This discovery became the missing link in the chain of evidence that the prosecutor's office was gathering to bring formal charges. On July 9, 2004, Justin Barber was charged with the intentional murder of his wife April. According to the legislation of the state of Florida, where the tragedy occurred, such a crime is punishable by execution. The investigation alleged that the man had cold-bloodedly shot his wife with a single shot to the face, and then, to cover his tracks, fired at himself several times with the same gun. However, the injuries he inflicted on himself were minor and superficial. Dozens of people arrived at the trial, both from the side of the accused and the victim. Regardless of the parties' positions, the faces of all those present reflected grief over the loss of the bright and kind girl that April was. Later, the defendant's mother admitted that the death of her daughter-in-law was a terrible blow to her, although she could not believe that her son was capable of murdering his beloved wife. The prosecutors accused Justin not only of a brutal murder but also of insidious machinations. In their opinion, the man sought not just to break off an unsuccessful marriage, but to do it with maximum benefit for himself. Therefore, he cynically took the life of his own wife in order to receive $2 million from the insurance policy. Among the prosecution witnesses was the girl with whom Justin played tennis and who later became his mistress. In her testimony, she said that they had met just a few weeks before the murder, and their relationship had developed rapidly and soon turned into an connection. During the court session, it also turned out that the tennis player was not the only extramarital passion of the accused. In total, the prosecutors counted at least 5 women with whom Justin had cheated on his wife during their married life. He kept each such connection strictly secret and skillfully hid his mistresses from each other. However, April felt that recently her husband had become cold and distant, so she began to suspect something was wrong. Eventually, she found out about the affair with the tennis partner. The prosecution claimed that the defendant had decided to get rid of his wife in the most profitable way for himself, rejecting the option of an ordinary divorce. 11 months before the tragedy, he took out 2 insurance policies for himself and April in the amount of $2 million. In each of them, the other spouse was listed as the beneficiary. At the time of concluding these contracts, Justin was already having an affair, so he was probably already considering the possibility of killing his wife. As it was found out, shortly before the crime, the suspect had participated in several unsuccessful business deals, due to which he was mired in debts of $58,000. Therefore, he desperately needed money, which pushed him to the terrible act. Confirmation of almost every point of the accusation was found in Justin's computer after careful analysis of the data by experts. For example, 6 months before the murder, he searched the internet for information about shots from weapons, the lethality of wounds to the chest and head received from the right side. Obviously, the suspect was studying ways to most effectively kill his wife with the first shot, while not arousing suspicion. In addition, he was interested in how to inflict non-fatal wounds on himself. Additional evidence was found on the body of the widower himself. The wound on the chest, which the bullet left tangentially, suspiciously coincided with the trajectory of the shot that was fatal for April. The prosecution refused to believe in such an incredible coincidence of circumstances. The prosecutor also announced in court the most important evidence that allowed a more accurate reconstruction of the sequence of events on the night of the murder. Instead of enjoying a romantic walk on the beach, Justin first tried to drown his wife. This was eloquently evidenced by the foam around the girl's mouth, a typical sign that before death, the victim was choking on salt water. When April lost consciousness from asphyxiation, the man dragged her body to where the police later found it. It was there that he fired a control shot to his wife's head, leaving her no chance of survival. In doing so, Justin unintentionally provided the investigation with one of the key pieces of evidence. The blood spatters on April's face had a characteristic direction and flowed from top to bottom, which contradicted his testimony. After all, he claimed that after the shot, he had dragged his wife along the beach for about 100 meters. But in that case, the blood drops would have been located completely differently, since Justin changed the position of the body several times due to his own injuries. However, the suspect's lawyers were not going to give up and stated that the detectives had destroyed an important piece of evidence found at the crime scene. The defender assured that he did not doubt his client's innocence for a moment, as there was no direct evidence against him. Indeed, the murder weapon, the gun, was never found during the investigation. The lawyer stressed that law enforcement officers were simply trying to pin the blame on Justin, as they had no other suspects and wanted to close this high-profile case as soon as possible. The lawyer also accused the police of bias and ignoring the testimony of eyewitnesses. In particular, the couple who were driving past the crime scene saw a Chrysler pickup truck parked near the victim's car. However, the investigators did not even manage to find and interrogate the owner of this vehicle. At the same time, the lawyers insisted that all the evidence provided by the prosecution was indirect and could not serve as irrefutable confirmation of Justin's guilt. In particular, the life insurance policy for April was purchased almost a year before the tragedy, so this fact in itself proves nothing. As the defense noted, married couples often take out such policies just in case. Moreover, in this case, the contracts were concluded for both spouses, so portraying this as a motive for the crime is a clear manipulation. Moreover, April was aware of all the details of the insurance and had the opportunity to personally control the terms of the policy, since it was issued with her consent. As for Justin's debt obligations, the lawyer expressed doubt that they could become a strong reason for the suspect to commit murder. Business failures were not a critical problem for him, as his annual income exceeded $100,000, quite a decent amount of money at the time. Justin was considered a promising and highly prospective specialist, so he could have gradually paid off the debts without much difficulty. The prosecutor regarded Justin's internet searches for methods of murder as irrefutable proof of planning the crime, while the defender stated that the investigators had selectively singled them out from thousands of innocent search phrases. According to the lawyers, the prosecution's version of the events of the fatal night seems simply absurd. Why drown your wife first and then shoot her, leaving numerous traces and evidence? Given Justin's mental abilities and high intellect, such an assumption defies logic. Why wouldn't he just shoot April right away? And why, having carefully planned the crime for 6 months, did the suspect not bother with a plausible staging of a robbery, not even throwing away his wife's jewelry? A person with such intellectual potential as Justin's could certainly have prepared much better. Experts involved by the defense refuted the version that the widower could have shot himself. According to them, if he had really done it, he would have chosen safer places on the body, because one of the bullets barely missed a large artery, and the other hit a bone and could have damaged vital organs. As proof that someone else had shot at Justin, the lawyers cited the location of the bullet holes on the defendant's shirt. They did not coincide with the actual location of the wounds on the body. This indicates that at the moment of the shots, someone was strongly pulling or deforming the clothes, apparently trying to snatch the weapon, as Justin himself said. The fate of this ambiguous case was in the hands of the jury. After a lengthy discussion, 5 of them were inclined to a guilty verdict. 2 considered the defendant innocent. And 5 more could not reach a final decision. The debate dragged on for 4 days and lasted about 30 hours, during which the members of the jury continuously analyzed all the materials of the proceedings. In the end, the jury decided to find Justin Barber guilty of first-degree intentional murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the right to early release. However, Justin was not going to put up with the verdict and promised to fight for justice until his last breath, never admitting his guilt. Unfortunately, all his appeals were rejected by higher courts. Thank you for watching this story. Write your thoughts about it in the comments. Don't miss the future videos, subscribe and like the channel. Take care of yourself and people you love.